Good day to everyone out there listening and watching, and welcome as we discuss, me with my great friend Tommy Rook, the MCIEF Annual Conference in Orlando coming up this October. As chair of the MCIEF board, I got to tell you that over the last 9 years, it has been a sheer pleasure not just to work with Tommy, but with the great group of folks that we have assembled who have volunteered their time and their talents for the sheer purpose. And I was thinking about this last night, Tommy, before I introduce you. What's the purpose of MCIEF? Well, the truck insurance business is a great industry. It's put a roof over my head. It's put a roof over your head, Tommy, and so many who are listening. So the idea, I think, in one nutshell phrase is to do it right, because you can do it right and you can still win. You may not win all the time, but knowing the facts, having the expertise, telling the truth, the full truth, and understanding the importance of underwriting and the policy and everything about trucking insurance, the trucking industry, safety, compliance, the things that we've had to learn so much about during my career that, frankly, we didn't even know the words 30 or 40 years ago, and they're integral to us today. And from my perspective, the one person in my life, in my adult life, that's done more positive for the truck insurance industry is my good friend, Thomas Rook. And he is the obvious founder of MCIEF and is the obvious education chair of MCIEF. So good morning, Tom.
John, good morning to you, and thank you for spending this time and giving these people a preview of what we're looking forward to on October the 7th and 8th. It's going to be nice to get everybody back together again after the 2019 was such a hit. We had to do it virtually in 2020, but it'll be nice to see everybody live again.
It will. It certainly will. The thing that we missed last year was what has been the unexpected. If you really want to say, when we formed MCIEF, we knew we could obtain good results with regard to education, which, and maybe good is not strong enough a word, superb, really. And you've done that. But the other thing that I think has been stunningly beneficial to us all has been the interaction. And, you know, for those of us who will be able to get together face to face, it will be quite valuable. But irrespective, Tommy, if folks have to meet remotely, we've got it handled. If folks can come to Orlando, we'll have it handled best we can in compliance with all the rules that are in place in Orlando at the time.
One of the things that distinguishes us between other conferences that you have been through and I've been through, association, Joe and I just did something at the Florida conference. There's a lot of trade shows here. Ours is an educational conference, but we build in the time to meet, to greet, and talk to people around these education elements. And one thing that I found beneficial for the foundation is you're meeting with your competitors, but everybody's learning together, because your worst competitor is somebody who didn't know what they're doing. And so I think this is the one thing the foundation has gotten all these, quote, people who used to compete with each other together in one place with one objective, and that's to learn more about providing insurance to a motor carrier. Plus, we always try to look to the future, as you know, too. We build in things that, and we have been pretty lucky in looking at where things are 2 or 3 years down the line to prepare people for it.
Absolutely. Looking to the future has been, as I said right before we started recording, Tommy Rook is the only person I know that as time passes, he gets younger. And I think if I had to state why, it's because you embrace the future and the next thing and the latest thing, the most important thing. And some of those with regard to trucking are constant. There's been a driver shortage or situation my entire career. But other things, all the electronics, the underwriting information that we use today has changed. You know, I wanted to take 1 minute to say that even though it's been a difficult year, the last year and a half, really, with regard to all of us and the way that we work, we have accomplished great things at MCIEF as we start to look forward, or continue to look forward, I should say, such as a great new website, a lot of infrastructure addition, and last July, the addition of Joe Huddlemeyer as the CEO of MCIF, actually gives Tommy Rook, for the first time in the history of the organization, somebody to literally lean on here and there. And what a godsend Joe has been to the organization. Wouldn't you agree, Tommy?
Absolutely. And Joe and I are on the same page about everything that we do, and leaves me time to do two other things to keep, as you say, to allow me to walk a little bit and spend more time with my grandkids, which will give me a chance to do without worrying about it. But the other thing is we've got about 35 new members this year. That's a real input. And the Truckers U is running about the 50% higher usage than they did the year before. So those two we're getting the word out in that area, John. It's real positive.
I would bet you, Tommy, that in the 9-year history of MCIF, the growth that we have achieved, which has been, quite obvious to everybody that's been involved since day one, will be eclipsed over the next 9 years substantially. The point I'm making is that the benefit of MCIF is so obvious that as more and more people enjoy the camaraderie, the education, the true competitive benefits that they have of the TRS, of all of the other education opportunities within MCIF, the involvement of the CIC. But the point is, I think that you're going to have more and more people on the retail agent level, on the insurance company level, and certainly on the wholesale insurance level, but also in the trucking industry itself, involved in MCIF over the next few years.
We're reaching out to the trucking industry because one of the things that we started the foundation based on, John, is the value of the TRS designation. As I said, I have a CIC, people have a CPCU and all this, but nobody's ever asked me or put any value on my CIC other than my own pride to achieve that part of it. But we actually now have companies and wholesalers who are looking at TRS designees as who to do business with. And we're on the talk radio shows, Road Dog Radio Show, at least once a month, if not twice a month. I'm on a podcast, and we talk about doing business with agents who know their business with TRS designation part of it. So that's the one thing that we have now made both the motor carrier and the insurance industry aware of, this unique ability to learn something about a special type of risk, and that's a for-hire interstate motor carrier. And we're producing, the foundation, with your help and everybody else, producing that information and that value to these people.
As we move to discuss this year's annual conference and the particulars of some of the offerings, there is benefit to the TRS folks at this conference as well, right? Whether even remote or in person.
Well, TRS requires a continuing education update requirement, which requires 12 hours of CE every 2 years on that update, and you can get it here. The one thing I do like, though, is we have a number of new TRS designees, and the people show up in Orlando, they can walk across the stage and give me a hug now this year, hopefully, or elbow thing or something, which is also get their picture taken, and line those people up to walk across the stage at the very first of the conference means a whole lot to everybody. So that's also a benefit to them. But the one of the values of this is not only the education and learning, but obviously, as you know, one of my favorite comments is always blame the government. CE is a requirement. So you can gain up to 16 hours of CE by attending these classes. And for the people who want to take it remotely, we do have it broken into 4 4-hour segments that'll be streaming or being provided remotely. And if they can't take all 16 hours, they can take any of those 4. As long as they complete 4, they can get 4 hours of CE for their state. However, for the TRS, they've got to take 12 hours to get the TRS update. And we do have a relationship with CIC, Certified Insurance Council, and the National Alliance. We're the only program that they have allowed to have update for CICs that they don't do. Part of this is because I started the trucking class in 1983, and nobody's done it since then. And we know how to do the CE filing and all. So people can get their CIC update, but they have to attend the 16 hours, all 4 segments during the remote part of to gain that update credit. But so it does meet that requirement to keep the designations and or to keep their license active. So that's a corollary to the education and to learning, and also to the meet and greet, to meet people.
So the obvious benefits that we talk about that we're looking forward to if we meet face-to-face in Orlando, the meet and greet, the camaraderie, and the interaction that occurs, and that's been so spectacular when we're all together. If we meet remotely, and for those that do, what we can also say is that we got extremely high marks last year from our first remote conference. We learned a ton about the technology, right? The way to do things and the way to improve that even. And this year remotely, we'll see improvements as we strive really to do the same thing with our educational presentations that we're doing with regard to the educational content, which is to make it first class all the way.
Yes, as we play this, we're actually, Joe and I are going to be in Orlando presenting the considerations and advanced underwriting advanced coverages the middle part of this month. And we're offering those both live and remote, that part. So we're going to have some people in the room with us, and we're going to have some people remote. So you're correct, John. We have learned how to do that, to offer those opportunities both. And people who learn better ways how they learn and who can't come down, to see us face to face. Yeah, it's a different world that we've learned. Thanks in the large part to Joe working these things out. I mean, when he started working July 1st last year, his first 2 months of objective is how in the world are we going to do the conference virtually in November? and we went through a whole lot of different vendors and way to do it. And we decided to spend more money than some others by actually having people hiring production people in Orlando to film us and then play those films with cameras and stuff, just instead of doing a Zoom meeting like here. And for the people who want to do it in the Orlando area, we look at the attendees so we can actually interchange with those people. At the conference, they'll be able to communicate not only with the people who are there, but also communicate with other people who are remote and ask questions, and those questions will be answered either live if possible while we're there, or we'll have the speakers answer those questions after it would be over. So we think we have maximized both the live experience and carry that over to virtually to be as close to live as you can without sitting in the room next to each other.
Not surprising. Hey, Tommy, back to October 7th and 8th. What are the hot topics going to be this year?
Well, moving forward this year, John, we've done one thing that we always have done, a tradition that I started many years ago when we started CIC, is we start with somebody from the industry. So this year, our leadoff speaker is Dave Hollier, who is the government regulation at the Truckload Carriers Association. Dave's been with us before. He's going to talk about what's happening in Washington. And what's happening in Washington has 2 or 3 major things as we talk right today going through this, the infrastructure bill, and will there be an increase in insurance limits, and also the Safe Drive Act, which is putting a program to have younger drivers who drive interstate that's younger than 21 years old with certain major considerations looked at. So Dave will tell us what's happening, what the government's doing to us. And then we'll follow up with a writer of articles and an interview, James Gillette, who has been with us before. He's done a lot of surveys. How's the industry changed because of COVID? What's the trucking industry doing? Driver shortage. And then the next person is one of your favorites and mine, and that's Dan Murray of ATRI. Have you ever seen anybody, John, who can make statistics interesting as he can?
My theory about him is if he taught my high school math classes, I might could have been somebody. Yeah, he's great.
He is. But that's going to be lead off with everybody. Then we're going to break into, like we always do, some breakout sessions. One of the things that we are going to, as far as the breakouts, we're going to do one. The motor carriers coverage form we've lived with now for about the last 13 years is a lot of discussion. We have been instrumental in getting it rewritten, revised. There's some things that need to be changed, like we don't need to exclude tape decks anymore in this thing. And we're making suggestions like instead of using attached to, use with because of drop-in hook. And so we actually have influence with ISO. So we're going to have Tom Kennefick and Larry Lawyer who's on that committee. And the one thing I did, John, before this, ISO has a committee to approve these kind of things, and they didn't have any representatives from the trucking industry, trucking riders. They had like north of Travelers, but not Norfolk. So we do have 4 of our members of the foundation who are on this committee, the explains committee, and explain the proposed changes that they're going to be made to give us the forward looking there. And then we're also going to look at the MCS 90. There's a couple of court cases involved in that we're going to look at, and the misunderstanding when it might or might not apply, and some of the problems. We got one that raised where some states are saying you got to have an MCS 90 even though it's applied to intra-state, which it really doesn't, and things like that. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Then we're going to have our second person as an option too. This is an option. Our friend Rob Mosley is going to talk about we're going to defend trucking companies with the new trucking image, and how's that changed now with more empathy, instead of fighting it facts-wise, because the plaintiff's attorney are using emotion, that reptile theory. How do we handle the reptile theory from a defense standpoint, so we can prepare our insureds for those things? And so at the same time, we're going to talk about a hot subject too that can be a breakout, and that's cyber liability. Joe Hollemeyer is going to lead that session. John, I hear something about cyber every day. It's something that it does affect the trucking industry. We've had a couple of our larger insureds be involved in that part of it, but I'm sure you're listening to this too. So that's really that's the first real quote new subject we'll introduce is the cyber, even though we're looking at these others that we've looked at before. But we should look at not only the exposures for truckers, but also for the coverage available, what coverage to buy. It's different. Truckers are different than what you would, because worried about the target and who's breaking in for people's email addresses. Clearly, we have employees then, but it's more theft of loads and the load boards and all this new virtual load distribution system that can be hacked into and used and this kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about that subject. And then we're also going to talk about the blockchain and cryptocurrency. Our friend Jay Taylor and Joe Hollemeyer are going to work through that. And John, I have no idea what that is. As you know, I write most of these classes, but for that subject, I've had Jay and Joe working on those cryptocurrency and the blockchains. And we do have some people who are involved in that to talk about how that is. And both of those, both cyber and this cryptocurrency, not every one of our insurers will be involved in, but some retail agents will run into this, and some underwriters need to know about this. So we have that to view, but that's going to be the start off that we have involved in it. You think those will interest some people? I got some more, but do you want to make a comment about any of those before I go to these other ones?
Well, I mean, the very first one, when you talk about ISO and involvement with ISO, it's almost stunning when you look at the history of the forms, who writes them and who sells them and who's covered by them, and the lack of interaction between the 3 groups. So this, I think, to everyone listening, is once again, it's an example of tell me who else has brought together these groups. And the answer would be MCIEF. And I still give you the credit, Tommy, as the founder and the educational chair. And it seems to me, if you were to discuss something like that it would be a very easy and logical step whenever there's a coverage need or a coverage form, that you would get together the experts from all angles and say, well, here's the issue. Here's what can be covered. Here's what should not be covered. Here's what we're wishing for. Here's what's intended, and then write the form. But no, it's, what has happened since I met you is people run to you and say, Tommy, explain this form to me. And you do. And then you spent, I'd say 3 or 4 years of your life trying to explain to everyone who will listen, well, it should have been this way, but it is this way, but we're working on get it done that way. And so that's an example of it's always going to be a pertinent subject, the coverage and the intricacies of them. So even though it's a current item, it's a continuous item. So that to me is very important when we talk about ISO and what's going on with forms. I think it might be the most traditional of the subjects that you've mentioned so far, but I think it's probably going to be as interesting as any.
Well, our relationship with ISO goes back about 10 years, and we've had there that helps out. The other thing that I also found is the MCS 90. I have documented 3 times where the FMCSA put the wrong MCS 90 available to everybody, and I've corrected them 3 times, and all 3 times they've changed. So I go back to the first time is in 2004, so I got letters there tracking that. So we're going to track those things too. The other
Tommy, I would also say this with regard to Jay Taylor, Rob Mosley, and Joe Hodelmeyer. If you've got them leading sessions, then it's going to be tough if they're taught at the same time to make a choice of which to see, because these are 3 true heavyweight experts, and they've all given so much to you and to us free of charge.
Right.
The expertise that they've given is really, this is one of the stunning successes of MCIF, is the expertise freely shared.
Well, John, not only that, we had people asking, I got a phone call yesterday asking, can I help at the conference and teach at the conference? And by the way, we are repeating these, so you have 2 chances to do it, to take these things here. We're also going to talk about last mile delivery, the new problems with going into people's homes and installing refrigerators and the GL exposure and that. Then Jay's going to lead another session that's talking about what's this technology. We have people who talk about the new technology and what's it doing in court cases where it is helping us in court, like event recorders, but it's also hurting if we're not doing it in court. And one of my favorite sessions will be the one that you're going to lead, this idea of using this big data, the accessibility to the ELD information and the EMC information or ECM information that allow us to move from a reactive position of underwriting where we only look at MBRs, loss runs, and CSA scores to a proactive. So now with access to the information, those records, we can see everything that they do before we write it and then keep track of them after we write it from a proactive standpoint to make sure they fit within our parameters. So what's your thoughts about how you're going to lead the sessions and where you're going to take it?
Well, I think exactly what you said, which is that underwriting has been, and this is true, I guess, in almost every class of business, a backwards looking snapshot. And so you get one point in time that you're picking to look at information that, and it's not bad information if it's accurate, but it's still nonetheless looking backwards. Whereas today, what we know is possible is to not just be proactive, but to look at information continuously and instantaneously. And when we say information, we're not just talking about stuff, we're talking about the very things that we're most interested in: vehicle speed, sudden events, all the things that self-insured risks have been looking at for years. They have a big advantage because, they're within one entity looking at the cost of loss, which is, the insurance aspect of what you and I deal with, but also the human cost, the behavior of patterns of the drivers, that if we can look at them during the course of our policy, Tommy, in an economical and viable way, we have a tremendous underwriting resource. And that was a dream 10 years ago. And today it's occurring. Certainly there are insurers right now that are looking at instantaneous data and adapting their underwriting models to the data that is available, that is being shared voluntarily by truck lines. And what we're going to do is talk about that. We won't get into the nitty gritty of who's doing what from the standpoint of sharing, how shall we say, secret recipes. But in the spirit of MCIF, what will be shared will be the models and the thought process and what is attainable right now in 2021 that will be beneficial to picking risks that have fewer losses and to helping risks trend loss in the proper direction.
Yeah, because in this session, we'll have Tom Braisman from J.J. Keller to explain exactly what the data is available to us. What can we find out from ELDs and EMCs? And we have Pat Storch, who's been on here a long time. They've got a new program that can do a scorecard and keep track of this and do some coaching remotely or automatically is a better word to put it, so that smaller motor carriers can can also use this, and defense in courts and underwriting and prove what they're doing to you. And we hopefully maybe it'll open the door for some of the new ventures or some of the people who are starting, give you some companies more comfortable writing it because we know more now exactly what they're doing and use of list management.
I love how you gather experts from different specific areas of interest. You know, when you say ELD, that's kind of like saying television. I think we have an understanding of what a television set may be, but all ELDs are not the same. And so what is obtainable and what is usable varies a lot. So to have an ELD expert as an example on your panel, we'll learn the ins and outs that otherwise I couldn't explain to someone.
I have no idea what this thing. And the last thing, Friday afternoon, where is the last 4 hours, is one that going back to your circle about the drivers. We're going to focus on the drivers. And that's going to be led off by Ellen Boyer, who's the president of Women in Trucking, talking about the driver situation today, not only driver shortage, but the need to include more than what we did before, meaning old fat males, where we have some more females and Hispanics, and how to accommodate those kind of people. And that's going to be led by Bridget Blitch and Drew Easton of that part. And they're going to talk about then how the driver is so important from underwriting and claim time. And we're going to then move into, again, Tom Bray's talking about how you onboard the driver. The J.J. Keller driver qualification file has to be done right going through, and just let the insureds know the importance to the agent, or to their, let the agents know to explain to their insured that they got to do everything that's government required to do, or it's going to buy them back in court. And Bridget's going to bring that part up. We're going to look at the new drug testing requirements and how we're losing people called drug testing, and more important, how we're reacting to the return to work procedure of that. Because now there's a procedure that government blesses that if you had failed to refuse a drug test, you can go through that and be able to be employed again. So we're going to talk about how's that going to float in court, and from an underwriting standpoint. We got someone from 10th Street talking about how to keep the drivers there, to focus on retention. And then we're going to end up looking at employee practice liability, because as you know, what we have to do to onboard a driver, if it was any other type of employer or employee, we couldn't do it. You can't ask somebody's age and physical abilities and do this kind of stuff before you put them to work. And the FMCSA requires the motor carrier to do that. And then we also have the question about medical marijuana. Is that protected by ADA and things like that? But that's going to be a dynamite 4 hours to end the conference on. John.
You know, Tommy, I was sitting there as I was listening to you, I'm thinking, well, how is MCIEF today? And if we were sitting here 9 years ago in late July, early August, looking at our first annual meeting in 2013, actually, it went off so well because the information that was shared was valuable to everyone that was there. It was quite a value. I mean, really, the truth is MCIEF is cheap. When you look at what you can learn and the money you can make because of the education that you receive, it's a small drop in the bucket. If we fast forward to 2021, I'd say the complexity of what you're offering, the breadth of what you're offering is much greater. And every year, the answer has been better than last year. How good was the conference last year? Best ever. How was it this year? Better than last year. And I think that we're on track. You know, you're going to have an issue, Tommy. I think remotely, you can handle a ton of people. But the point is, if you want to be in Orlando in October, if you want the best continuing education, if you want to know the most about what's going on in the trucking industry as it relates to insurance, then this is a must attend event.
John, I appreciate that part. And to do this, I've asked a couple of agents who have been to these previous conference and someone to Bridget Glitch to actually go into what she plans to put together for her afternoon session that we just reviewed. So let's listen to those people now, John, to give some testimonial and let them how they do. So here's a couple of agents, and here's Bridget.
Let's listen to them now. Thanks, Tommy.
Good morning, Bridget. Bridget Glitch, a lawyer in Orlando who we've worked with often. Bridget, this is your what, fifth or sixth time you've been a part of our conference?
I believe so, Tommy. It's
Well,
always a
welcome you.
pleasure.
Good. Tell us a little bit about your past experience and why you and the other presenters, because you've helped us arrange a lot of presenters there, are willing to come down and share their knowledge with these group gathering in Orlando every year.
Well, Tommy, I think you always get such a terrific group of presenters and professionals in the motor carrier industry to speak at your conference. I mean, I certainly am honored to be there and participate. In years past, some of you folks may remember we did a mock trial, and I had a great group of talented trial lawyers come and just kind of play out what happens when an accident happens, when you've got a serious, uh, whether it's a TBI, traumatic brain injury, or some serious fatality that occurs, and how it affects our clients, your clients, and understanding the legal process. You've also may remember we've done some great presentations with law enforcement. We've had the Florida Highway Patrol and their senior officers come and discuss various things about what happens when a driver gets pulled over and gets issued a commercial motor vehicle enforcement violation, and how that impacts their CSA scores. I know for a lot of you folks listening, that's a very big part of evaluating the risk exposure when an underwriter or insurer goes to look to placing insurance with our clients. So understanding how that all works in context and what clients can do to protect their motor vehicle records and also just maintain safe practices. So we have a lot of diverse subjects that have been in the conference that I've had the opportunity to participate in, and I'm excited for this year's conference, Tommy, to be back in person too.
Yeah, it is in person. We did that one for the out of California PLA that we had to do me virtual and you in person. It's going to be great to have it because I think that's another advantage. You have met a lot of agents and actually have helped some of theirs and some of their insurance through this relationship. A lot of times, not at a cost consideration unless it becomes a trial or things that you got to do a lot of work with. I think you're a little bit like me. As long as you don't have to put anything in writing, you don't charge much for people here. But that's the advantage too, to have those resources for the agents to know where to come as we get questions all the time in that way, Bridget, and we really appreciate that. And you're right, what we want to show the agents so they're more prepared, so they can prepare their insured how things happen from the inspection standpoint to once the trial has there to prepare them for these kind of things. And this year, the Friday afternoon session that you're going to lead, we appreciate this. We're trying to look at the drivers themselves. And a part of it, before we get there, we'll talk about how we're going to use the data and all that for underwriting purposes. But when you boil it down to, it's the driver of the vehicle that is the number one concern for underwriters and number one concern from the court cases. So, we're going to put a program together through that. And I think the lead off speaker, Ellen Boyer with Women's in Trucking, brings a unique exposure to this kind of stuff to update us on the current driver shortage. You have done a program with her before, but she's a wonderful speaker.
Oh, she is. It's always a joy to work with Ellen, and she really is just such a tremendous resource in the industry for women and for our clients in general. And I think her background, being a driver, of course, and going through and working in this industry and seeing some of the challenges that we face, or that our clients face, whether it's from a driver shortage or a safety perspective or human resource issues. And there's a lot that goes into it. And so she comes with that background, boots on the ground, so to speak. And I really enjoyed working with her and appearing, of course, at her conferences, presenting at her conferences. So I think, she's going to be able to offer a lot of insight is how can we diversify this industry. And time again, I hear how valuable women drivers are to the industry. My clients just really appreciate having them in their fleet and their attention to detail and the importance and focus that they put on safety. And so that's, part of her mission as well is, whether it's in the driver's seat or whether it's in dispatch or HR or some other capacity or an owner. We have a lot of mutual clients that are, women owners of motor carrier companies. So just, to educate our audience about some of the things that we're doing as an industry to expand and support not just what is a critical function in the supply chain, which is providing transportation, but showcasing those opportunities for women in leadership in this industry as well.
She always reminds us that the proof is by ATRI and all, which Dan Murray will be earlier in the program, that female drivers are safer than male drivers. That's because of what they're built in. So we like that part. And I think it's going to be very interesting because we're going to have Drew Eason, obviously, from AmWinds to visit here with you to talk about, both of us look at the drivers and what drivers do we want to allow to drive an insured truck, because that's the driver that you're going to have to defend their actions at later. So, and we'll look at the hiring criteria. I think this is a big part to balance those two things. And a part of it, and I've used this before to talk to my insured when they have a driver they want to make some exceptions to, how are you going to defend that person in court? And that's a big concern here that we hope we get the message. Part of the decision on Drew's part about who's an acceptable driver has to do with how you're going to have to defend them once it gets to the court case.
Well, yeah, when you think about what a huge responsibility it is to drive a commercial motor vehicle and that trust that you're putting in that person. And so, talking about underwriting considerations, a lot of times I see our clients wanting to hire the older drivers because they're more experienced. And I have many clients that have more than million-mile drivers that are accident free. And then it gets to a certain point where maybe you have age restrictions in your hiring criteria. And, we struggle with how do we ensure that we continue to have this driver if they're otherwise physically fit and able to do their job and they've proven that they're a safe driver. We want to keep them on our fleet. So we have to balance those considerations, or maybe drivers with diabetes or other special conditions that, they're otherwise safe driver, but they may present some other risk that we have to make sure is being effectively managed. So I think that's, another part of the consideration is retaining that that qualified candidate in your fleet as well.
Yeah, I think we have Marilyn from 10th Street to help talk about, because she's done some studies about what it takes to retain the driver support. And I appreciate what you just said, because now we're going to pitch for your husband's going to be a part of that last one, talking about it, you have to balance safety with the regs and the insurance underwriter, and don't worry about discrimination. I've been reading a couple of articles where a couple of trucking companies have been now held liable for discrimination and sexual harassment, as well as other things. And when you look at a protected group, again, I want your husband to explain it more than I do about it. You're talking about anybody over 40 years old and a single sex kind of workforce. Well, trucking is a premise more than any other industry. Is all great majority are old fat males and with possible physical problems. So walking through that quagmire, giving some suggestions how we word those kind of things to make sure that we do this will be important. I'd love to hear from him. And we also are going to talk about the importance to know a driver qualification file. I got Tom Brady, JJ Keller. Agents, if you don't spend the $7 to get a copy of that file so that your insurer knows what's going right, you're not spending enough money. The money the right way to do that. But those are important things, because once you get it in court, all those things that they were supposed to do, if they don't do it, gives you a problem defending them.
Well, and that's exactly right, Tommy. And we can have, otherwise great facts, and all it just takes is one issue, right? That one issue for that plaintiff's lawyer to hook onto to really push the case. And we're finding more and more that it's getting difficult out there to resolve these cases, and we've got very aggressive plaintiffs bar. So that ounce of prevention, whether it's making sure that you're diligently looking over that driver qualification file, doing your driver training, finding out what experience they have, and are you exposing your company to risk? Because all it takes is that one accident, that one red light that gets ran, or maybe there was nothing that the driver could do to prevent the accident, but yet there's some technical defect that comes up in the driver qualification process that wasn't identified, that makes it a struggle for the later assigned defense counsel to try to resolve the case and resolve it under policy limits. So you have these very, important issues that we're going to be talking about in this session, like what's going on behind the scenes before the accident ever happens, to make sure that we're doing what we need to protect your insureds, protect my clients from those catastrophic claims.
And the other thing we're going to do, we have somebody from Metrodime and Aaron Huff from JJ Keller, who has written, CCJ Digest, who's written some articles about the new driver coaching, training, monitoring. And this is becoming important for even smaller motor carriers to do this, not only to look at them themselves, but to have a record to say that we are addressing these concerns. And I think that becomes important in court time, not that what the driver did wrong as much, what are we doing to make sure they're doing it better? And this gives you some reasons to, they're doing the proof things defense. But that's going to be a dynamite session that we're going to have, Bridget, I think, talking for those whole 4 hours, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. No, and I think understanding the hiring process, understanding the training process, and making sure from a day-to-day perspective that the insureds, our clients, are doing the best practices to, if they're, God forbid, ever put in that position that they're going to have a defense attorney represent them, that will have implemented those tools to give them everything they need to push for a successful defense. And like you're talking about, technology, training, event recorders, things that can exonerate not just the motor carrier company, but the driver. I mean, we've certainly seen our fair share of cases where the drivers get cited as well. And so there's an incentive that the drivers want to protect their livelihood and their ability to continue to provide for their family. And so all of these tools really work hand in hand with both driver and the motor carrier company.
So it gets back to what we're talking about. The driver is the key to part of this. And so we got to encourage our insurer to look at quality, not quantity, with the driver shortage and all. It's going to be a good session, Bridget. We look forward to seeing you there. And I'm sure everybody here who's listening to this here will look forward to seeing you there. We are going to virtually stream some of this, and this session will be too. So if they cannot come to Orlando, we'll also be able to make this available then. But Bridget, thank you very much for your time here, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of months.
Thank you, Tommy. Always a pleasure. Look forward to it as well.
Welcome, Rich. We're trying to put a promotional piece out for the foundation and share memories of the past and looking at the future one that we're going to have in a month and a half from now. And you've been to them all. Tell us about your history with them and where we started from day one. This is our 9th one.
I can't believe it's been that many already, Tommy. You know me. I pursued CIC in order that I could go to truck CIC rubles. And so as you launched this foundation and talked about these conferences, it's always been enthusiasm and excitement. And it's been near and dear to my heart. I love the ability to come in, continue to learn that which is leading edge, that's going to be different. The challenge is always there. What are we going to be dealing with this next year, next 3 to 5? So that part of it's great. Being able to obtain my CE and my updates are always good. But as you know me, and you give me a bad time about all the people's names in my Rolodex, I love the networking, right? And so this is a chance to get together with friends. And even if they're considered to be competitors, my career path has turned a lot of people into my allies to be friends and to help one another. So therein lies so much value in MCIEF that you have a hard time finding in a lot of other venues. So it's great to be back. Last year, a little challenging to network and interact with people, but we still pulled that off in the virtual.
Yeah, you're right about a couple of things. They're obviously making a CIC update. As you know, this started with CIC from me teaching back in 1983 and done a program forever. So part of it's to make the CIC, and that's where I started. That's where I met you and met a number of retail agents. So that's a real benefit here for the National Alliance to allow the update. And I think we're the only program that they allow that in, that they don't have something to put on here. But that's a part of it, and just honoring the quality of programs that we've put in the past. The other thing that I find that the unique part of it in this that you just relate to is that people who look for CE, and it goes back to what we say, always blame the government. The reason you have to have CE is because the government makes them. But so many of these things are done by just somebody reading a policy, has no relevance to what you do every day. In fact, sometimes some people get that online just to get it away from them. And I find that's a waste of time, because hopefully they can learn something that makes them a better agent, a better producer, be able to relate to the insurers. And so we try to do the subjects that they deal with all the time. And obviously our main focus is interstate for-hire motor carriers. And I think we're the only program that limits their presentations to those focuses.
Well, and the topics that you bring up allows agents to interact with each other and with their underwriters. And so after that conference, we continue to talk a lot about the content. And then people are emailing and LinkedIn messaging and following up, calling, right, to try to get some clarification for their case. So therein lies that value to use this network and to use this conference group and the people that attend to help yourself.
And we've been beneficial to people wanting to present. The series of lawyers and experts in this area, they come down and share it because of the environment that everybody's there to learn. And that's the purpose part. I also thought was very interesting where you talk with your competitors. This is something that is also unique that the foundation did. Part of it is that the competitors are there, even though they're competing, but they're all competing at the same level. And the principle that we had is the worst competition you have is one who doesn't know what they're doing. So we're all here learning together. And that's one thing I'm proud of the foundation, is that they're able to build these various competitors, but all come together for a common cause. And that's to learn more about what they're doing and sharing that knowledge with everybody who's involved in this marketplace. Also, your TRS designation has some meaning too, does it not, Rich?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I was proud to have that. And that is meaningful. And so therein again, puts that professional, lantern out there before us to shine a little bit brighter. And so it's good to know that there's a lot of people now in pursuit of that. So years and years of going to CICs and other updates and then being able to affirm that. But now it's great. I love being able to talk to people about pursuing that, as well as the trucking you that's built out of this. So it all pulls together about how are you going to become that professional expert. A lot of people talk about having their expertise after 10,000 hours invested. So that's a great way to start it, and start counting your hours off on what you're putting into your truck insurance knowledge.
This year, we have a lot of program built in this part of it, and have the meet and greet typical, and it's on our line. But you're going to head up one subject here too, which we appreciate. I think most of the conferences you have shared and been the leader of one of the sessions or not. And this was the unique new kind of marketplace growing out of the pandemic, and that's the last mile delivery. Can you tell us a couple minutes about how you visualize that part of the program that you're going to head up?
You bet. And I appreciate that. I mean, I love to help moderate, I love go to the sessions, but as you moderate and get other people interacting, that's where that's great to hear other agents contributing. It's not just the people sitting there with the microphone. How can we help everybody? This final mile segment, as you know, we've been developing this new era of transportation for 8+ years now, as everything changed with freight brokers coming in with the final mile, the Amazon aspect to it. We just see a huge change in transportation, right? And so what started a long time ago when we did a CIC talking about how contract haulers are used in California and a unique aspect of how that worked. Well, look, it's nationwide now, and it's the person who owns the freight subcontracting. So as we get into this, you're going to hear a lot of new challenges, right? Contractual challenges, who owns the freight, different kinds of GL exposures. You have independent contractors who rent vehicles, short-term leases. So there's going to be a lot of different auto liability, cargo, physical damage, GL. So if you intend to dabble in it, maybe you shouldn't, if you want to be a part of it, attend this session. If you are just curious to know what's going on, because it is a whole new developing area. And I'm glad to know that you found some experts to come in. It's a real challenge for the agent. It's a real challenge for the underwriter, because it's a new era. It's developing, just like trucking has new loss exposures develop every year. Well, so is this one. And so we have seen this last year changes in the claims and in the coverage, but also you're seeing new tools being utilized with technology impacting it, just like all the others. So should be a good session.
Rich, you're right. We've got some people coming in, and I previewed some of it with you already and with them about it. And one of the things that I had not thought about that was brought up when we talk about is the new GL exposure, because now you got people inside people's houses, which would be theft and interaction with those people. And some of those people are not of the right quality here. And so you could have some things like that. And you just don't think about that now with last mile, because now we got a trucker who's installing, and then that trucker and their moral hazards or stuff like dealing with the customer and dealing with what's in that house is a whole different world. So you're right. If you're going to do this, they need to know to do it right. And your session will give them some guidance that way, as well as some potential markets thing. So our purpose is not to limit the market by showing the bad part, but to explain it so people know where it is, to expand the market, to make it easier for them to obtain this. Well, Rich, we really appreciate the time here, and you can go ahead and tell them we'll hope to see them in Orlando at the big event.
I'm going to be there, and so I look forward to shaking your hand, and if you feel so inclined, buy me a beverage.
Well, we got coupons for the beverage for that part of it, and so we look forward to seeing you there, my friend. It's been a while, and
Yep.
Be safe.
Thank you, Tommy.
Rocky, welcome. How's everything up there in Toledo?
Everything in Toledo is just fine, Tommy. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, we appreciate you spending some time today. We wanted to get out and talk about the value of the annual conference we're having October 7th and 8th in Orlando, and you've attended a number of these. So we thought as an agent, maybe you could share with the potential people who might be interested what you got out of it and why you think it's so important to your business career and should be to theirs.
Well, Tommy, as you know, I strongly support the mission of MCIEF, and this annual conference is invaluable to trucking insurance professionals all across the country. It's truly a who's who of the United States trucking insurance industry. We have an ever increasing number of underwriters from the insurance carriers. Of course, we have trucking insurance brokers, wholesalers, MGAs, agents. I would hazard to say that there really is not an agency or an insurance carrier of any significance in our industry that doesn't have some presence at the conference.
Rocky, we find that's true in this part of it, and it's very important because the good thing that the foundation did, which you could go back where it wasn't all this unusual, is competitors are there together to learn together, because it's an educational process. The meet and greet and this is important, but education is also important, looking ahead. And so you got a lot of your competitors there that you're learning together. So at least we're trying to bring everybody on the same page and show a value to the marketplace of that. If you're members of the foundation and you have a TRS designation, then we rather do business with you, because after all, after spending 48 hours in front of me in these conferences, they know something about trucking.
Tommy, I've spent many an hour listening to you expound, and I have always benefited from every one of those hours. I will also tell you that I am a proud holder of the TRS, Transportation Risk Specialist designation. conferred by MCIEF. I think that this designation will grow to have more and more significance over time in our industry as more and more trucking insurance professionals recognize its value, do the work to get the designation. I know there are a number of underwriters out there who hold the designation, underwriters that I've worked with for years and respect. I think it's going to become, if it hasn't already, a difference maker in the industry. I think premium payers, I think truckers are going to say, well, okay, I know you're calling me up wanting to work with me on my insurance and risk management, but tell me why you don't have a TRS designation yet. I expect those kind of questions will be asked over time. And I do believe that it sets you apart as a practitioner with expertise in our specialized industry.
Well, thank to you and you offer and what you've added to the programs and all, Rocky, because you have participated in a number of these as a presenter at the conferences and also the basic classes that we're getting that mission across. That's our objective here, because the worst competitor you have is one who doesn't know what they're doing. And the worst insurance market we have to compete with is ones who do not understand all that goes on in this. So we're hoping to level the playing field so at least people understand the exposures and what those exposures are.
Well, truer words are never spoken. When you have someone out there purporting to operate as a professional in your niche industry of trucking insurance, and they really don't understand risk, and perhaps they're representing insurance carriers that also don't have a full and deep understanding of the ins and outs of trucking and trucking insurance. These people disrupt the marketplace. They don't serve the clients. They're not the kind of people that you want to be competing against. Look, we're all competing every day. That's fine. That's the nature of free enterprise. But you want that level playing field that you referred to. You want to know that your expertise is respected and that your clients are making good, rational decisions based on the quality of the insurance that's being offered, the value adds for safety and loss control. And all of those fundamentals can flow from the kind of education that's available to the trucking insurance professional through MCIEF.
And one thing we're going to know this year is going to be heavily the new technology, all those new apps out there that you're dealing with, that your insurance can deal with, that underwriters are going to use this so much data here. It's going to be a real interesting conference. So you're going to be in Orlando. I hope you will see you there, Rocky, and I really appreciate all that you're doing, my friend. And we appreciate you letting the people who listen to us know the value of coming down to Orlando in October. See you. Be safe.
Excuse me. I'm looking forward to it very much. Thank you very much, Tommy.
Thank you, Rocky.
Bye now.
John, that was pretty interesting to let these agents know, because some of them have been there from the start. Rocky and Rich have been there forever, and you see what Bridget's trying to do. And, you know, as you point out, they're giving their time freely. Bridget is, and these lawyers. So we really appreciate that. So we hope everybody can learn from the conference and now understand what we're offering, and hopefully to see them in Orlando, either through in-house so we can talk to them personally, or at least virtually so we can notice and get the information.
Well, thanks for asking me to be with you this morning. I'm very excited about what we're going to achieve together in just a short order. And anything I can do to help between now and then, call me.
You're on, John. Be good.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.